The morning of her birthday arrived without ceremony. No cards, no messages, no small reminder from a calendar app she no longer owned. She realized it only because the date was written in thick black marker on a library flyer taped to a bus stop pole. Today, free community meal. The number beneath it matched the one she'd been carrying in her head since dawn. 32. She stood there longer than necessary, rereading it as if the ink might change. The air was sharp with cold, the kind that found the thin places in her coat and settled there. Her breath came out in short clouds, each one disappearing faster than the last, proof of how easy it was to vanish. She hadn't always spent birthdays like this. Once, there had been balloons taped to walls, candles stuck into grocery store cakes, laughter that filled rooms she assumed would always be there. But time had a way of peeling things back slowly, almost politely, until one day you looked around and realized there was nothing left to lose except the habit of remembering. She adjusted the straps of her backpack, the one thing she still owned that required both shoulders. Inside were socks she'd washed in a public restroom sink, a paperback missing its cover, and the last photo of her mother folded so many times the creases had nearly erased her smile. The shelter had been full the night before. Again. The woman at the desk hadn't been unkind, just tired. Try again tomorrow, she'd said, as if tomorrow were a solid place she could stand. So she walked. Past coffee shops glowing with warmth she couldn't justify entering. Past parents hurrying children along, their hands full of lunches and certainty. Past a bakery where a bell chimed every time someone opened the door, releasing the smell of sugar and comfort into the street. She stopped there, just for a second, letting it wash over her. Vanilla. Buttercream. Birthdays. She laughed under her breath. A quiet, humorless sound. The universe had a sense of timing, if nothing else. By noon, her feet ached and the sky had turned the flat gray that promised nothing. She found a bench near the park on Saturday, pulling her coat tighter. She told herself she didn't need much today. Just somewhere to be. Somewhere warm. Somewhere she didn't have to explain herself. She didn't know yet that the smallest kindness, offered without questions, was already on its way. The park was quieter than she expected for a weekday afternoon. The swings creaked in the wind, empty except for a single plastic bag tangled around one chain, snapping softly like a flag of surrender. She chose a bench beneath a bare tree and Saturday with her hands tucked between her knees, watching people pass without looking at her. She had learned the rules of invisibility quickly. Don't make eye contact too long. Don't ask. Don't linger where you're not wanted. Blend into the background until you feel less like a person and more like a shadow that happens to breathe. A little girl's laugh cut through her thoughts, bright, sudden, unafraid. She looked up despite herself. The child couldn't have been more than 7, bundled in a puffy jacket, boots too big for her feet. She was dragging a stick through the dirt, narrating an elaborate story to herself. A few steps behind her walked a man, coffee in one hand, eyes alert in the way of someone who was used to being responsible for another human being at all times. They passed her bench once. Then again. On the third loop, the girl stopped abruptly and stared. It's her birthday, the girl announced. The woman stiffened, heart dropping. She glanced behind her, certain the child was talking about someone else. But the girl was looking straight at her, eyes wide with certainty. I'm sorry, she said. The man froze. Emma, he warned gently. We don't. It is, the girl insisted. I can tell. Heat rushed to the woman's face. She hadn't said it out loud. Hadn't told anyone. The words felt too fragile to survive daylight. It's okay, she said quickly, forcing a small smile. She's just guessing. The man looked embarrassed. I'm really sorry. She has a strong intuition. Emma tilted her head. You look like you're supposed to have cake today. That did it. The laugh slipped out before she could stop it, short, surprised, almost painful. Well, she said, you're not wrong. The man hesitated, then did something unexpected. He sat down on the far end of the bench, leaving careful space between them, like someone who didn't want to startle a stray animal. We were actually on our way home, he said. I was going to make a cake. Nothing fancy. Emma gasped. Dad. He sighed. What? She looked at the woman again. She shouldn't be alone on her birthday. The wind stirred the branches above them. The city hummed in the distance, indifferent and loud. The man met her eyes, uncertain but kind. No pressure, he said. Really? But if you'd like a slice of cake and somewhere warm for a bit, you're welcome to join us. The offer hung in the air, simple, terrifying, real. She swallowed. Kindness like that came with risks. Hope always did. But the cold was sinking deeper, and for the first time all day, someone had seen her. Okay, she said softly, the cake Saturday on the kitchen table, small and slightly lopsided, with a smear of frosting trailing down one side, but somehow it looked perfect. She hesitated at the edge of the room, unsure if she had the right to step inside, to take up space, to exist in this warmth that felt foreign on her skin. The smell of vanilla and sugar made her stomach clench with a mix of hunger and nostalgia. Mark gestured toward the chairs. Go ahead, sit. Don't worry, it's all yours. Emma was already perched on her chair, swinging her legs and grinning. You have to make a wish first, she announced with the certainty of someone who believed the world was fair. Her eyes dropped to the cake, blinking as if it might vanish if she looked too long. Birthdays used to mean something once, balloons, candles, laughter echoing in a room that smelled like cinnamon and hope. Those days felt buried under years of struggle and cold nights, of invisible footsteps and silent bus rides. She took a breath, shutting her eyes. The wish formed in her mind, fragile and tentative, almost embarrassed by its simplicity. She didn't wish for money or a home, or even for the past to return. She wished for one night, just for a single evening, to feel safe, seen, and allowed to belong. Emma clapped loudly. Done, she declared. Mark cut the cake with careful hands, placing the first slice on her plate. It was generous, more than she expected, an unspoken gesture of welcome. She accepted it with both hands, feeling the weight of the gesture settle gently in her chest. The first bite was electric, unremarkable in taste but monumental in meaning. Tears pricked her eyes before she could stop them. She tried to laugh, tried to shrug it off, but the sound cracked and wobbled, a fragile release of months of tension. It's just cake, she managed, voice tight. Mark shook his head, voice soft. No, sometimes it's not. Emma slid a napkin toward her without hesitation. You can cry, she said. My dad cries sometimes. That broke the last of her defenses. Laughter spilled through her tears, awkward and messy, but real. The warmth of the kitchen, the quiet insistence of human kindness, the acceptance of a little girl who didn't see her as a problem, all of it coalesced into something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. For one evening, she wasn't homeless. She wasn't invisible. She was allowed to stay, to be messy, to take up space at a table with real people who cared. The cake was gone too soon, but the feeling lingered, a quiet, insistent ember of something new, something possible. She looked up at him and smiled, and for the first time that day, the world felt a little less lonely. The walk to their apartment was short but felt impossibly long. She followed half a step behind him, every instinct warning her to stay alert, to memorize exits, to be ready to disappear if she had to. Trust was a luxury she'd learned to live without. Still, Emma kept glancing back at her, smiling as if the decision had already been made and the world had adjusted accordingly. This way, the man said, holding the door of the building open. I'm Mark. She hesitated, then nodded. She stopped herself. Names felt intimate. Permanent. You can call me whatever's easiest. Mark didn't push. He just nodded and led the way up a narrow flight of stairs that smelled faintly of laundry detergent and old paint. The hallway light flickered as they passed, buzzing softly, like it was working harder than it wanted to. Inside the apartment, the warmth hit her first. Not just heat, but the lived-in kind, radiators clanking, soft music playing low, something simmering on the stove. It was a small place, but every surface told a story. Emma's drawings taped to the fridge, shoes piled by the door, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table. You can put your bag there, Mark said, gesturing to a chair. If you want. She set it down carefully, as if afraid it might stain the room just by being there. Emma immediately knelt beside it. Do you have snacks in here? She asked, entirely too comfortable. Emma, Mark warned again, though there was a smile in his voice. It's okay, she said quietly. Just clothes. Emma nodded solemnly, as if that explained everything. Mark moved to the kitchen. I'll start on the cake. It's a box mix, full disclosure. That's the best kind, Emma said. She stood awkwardly near the doorway, unsure where to place her hands, her weight. The walls felt close, not in a bad way, but in a way that reminded her how long it had been since she'd been inside somewhere that belonged to someone else. You can sit, Mark said, noticing. Or, if you'd rather, there's tea. Tea would be nice, she said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. As he filled the kettle, Emma tugged on her sleeve. You're really coming to cake? She nodded. I think so. Emma grinned, satisfied, and ran off to find plates. The kettle began to whistle, sharp and alive. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug when Mark handed it to her, letting the heat seep into her fingers, into places the cold had been living for weeks. She took a small sip and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to believe this wasn't a mistake. Just a moment. Just enough.